Awesome. Good. Good evening, everyone. Welcome in, welcome in. Hi, folks. It's nice to see you all. For those online, I apologize that you can't see my face, but my name is Salome Shmuku or Salome, a she, her pronouns, and I am the chair of the Multnomah County Democrats. I want to welcome you into the PCC Klein Center and also welcome those who are joining us online for this You Be the Judge Judicial Candidate Forum. Just so folks know, this night is hosted by the Multnomah County Democrats, but we invited all judicial candidates as this is a nonpartisan race. And we think it's important for folks to know all of the different potential judges, that could be in front of them, because once they are elected in office, their job is to serve all of us. So we thought it was important that everyone be here. For tonight's forum, because we do have almost, I think, all of the candidates except for Ms. Heidi Brown online, they are here in person. So the way that we're going to make this work is we're going to rotate folks up by the position that they're running for. So that way you're hearing from all the candidates in one position at the same time and help you navigate your ballot a little easier. Just a reminder for folks, judicial candidate races have a little bit more competing rules around fundraising and how they can spend dollars. So you may not see all the judicial candidates in your voter's guide, which is again another reason why we chose to have this event, to make sure that all candidates running had an opportunity to plead their case, pun intended, in front of the audience and in front of voters. So with that, I am going to introduce our candidates for position 2 first. We have Chris Baer. Chris has spent his career representing people at some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. Growing up, his dad was diagnosed with schizophrenia and got denied disability benefits repeatedly. A judge finally heard their case and granted his dad the benefits that saved their family. That decision inspired Chris to pursue a career in not only public service and shaped his entire understanding of what a thoughtful judge can mean to a family in crisis. So Chris, go ahead and wave. Awesome.
Thank you.
We have Anit Jindal. Anit is a Portlander, father, and attorney. For over a decade, he has represented clients in high-stakes civil disputes that often hold statewide or national significance. He was part of the trial team that defended the Reduction of Gun Violence Act, Measure 114, in state and federal court. He is ready on day one to handle the busy and complex docket of a Multnomah County Circuit Court judge. Go ahead on it, wait. There we go.
Thank you.
Next, we have Diana Sykes. Diane is honored to run for Multnomah County Circuit Court Judge Position 2 to serve the community we all deeply care about with fairness, integrity, respect for the rule of law. For nearly 3 decades, she has fought for the Oregonians as a public defender, legal aid attorney, senior assistant attorney general, leading the state's first civil rights unit, and now as a civil rights and workers' rights attorney in private practice. She has spent her career standing up for veterans, workers, consumer survivors, and vulnerable communities, always working to ensure every person who enters a courtroom is treated with dignity and heard fairly. As your judge, she will bring real-world understanding, compassion, and unwavering commitment to a transparent, impartial, and accessible justice system. Next, we have Laura Rowan. Over her career as a public servant, she has extensive trial experience, knowledge of criminal and civil law, and understand that our community needs from the bench. She has served as a Multnomah County Deputy District Attorney, a Deputy City Attorney for the City of Portland, and is now a Senior Assistant General for the Oregon Department of Justice. She was in Multnomah County's first mental health deputy district attorney and has focused much of her career on intersection of mental health and the criminal justice system. As a trial attorney, she has tried cases ranging from misdemeanors to murder, supported survivors of domestic violence, human trafficking, and violent crime, and litigated complex constitutional claims. There. And then we have Juliette Britton. Judge Juliette Britton is a presiding judge at one of the busiest municipal courts in Oregon and has lived in Multnomah County for the last 17 years. Her almost three-decade career has exclusively been in public service. Her background includes practicing both as a prosecutor and defense attorney, advocating for abused children as executive director of a court-appointed special advocate or CASA program, and also running Oregon state agency that supervises defendants who assert the insanity defense. She is an Army veteran who started her career as a judge advocate or JAG attorney and is active in her community advocating for veterans and those involved in guardianship legal system. So welcome to our position 2 candidates. So, as I mentioned before, we have the blessing of having all of these candidates present here with us today. And so for our position 2 candidates, your question to start us off is, what issue area did you wish the court played more of a role in?
Hello, Diane Sykes. I'm interested in looking more at juvenile offenders who are incarcerated at Oregon Youth Authority who are going to age out and be transferred to adult custody on Measure 11 crimes. With tier 2 crimes, there is the ability to have more flexibility, and there is a process called a look back or a second look hearing that allows for an assessment, risk assessment in conjunction with community justice partners, the DA's office, law enforcement, probation and parole, to look at whether as an alternative to incarceration, whether youth who are aging out are amenable to other types of pretrial release. And under strict supervision, obviously factoring in community safety and victims' rights, because the studies have shown that youth don't fully develop with respect to psychological development, and it seems that a fair option to allow for that consideration, because money shouldn't be the only reason that somebody stays incarcerated with respect to pretrial release, and coupled with the fact that looking at treatment courts and assessing specifically what can benefit youth in order to get services that will ensure success, avert recidivism, and have better outcomes.
Thank you. I think the issue that the Multnomah County Circuit Court really needs to be focused on tackling right now is the backlog of cases at the court. Cases can be delayed months or even years without decisions, and that is a delay in justice that we should all be worried about. I think that what the court needs are judges that are able to roll up their sleeves on day one, take any case that is assigned to them, and deal with them in an efficient manner. And I think I'm well suited for that job. In my practice, I represent all sorts of different types of parties: plaintiffs, defendants, individuals, businesses. I also handle all different types of cases. I think in my bio, there was a discussion of gun control laws. I've handled high-level constitutional issues like that. I handled high-level constitutional issues in the areas of environmental law and other things. I also represent individuals and businesses in a whole host of civil disputes. And what I think that means is that I'll have the flexibility and work ethic to step on the court on day one and help and be able to march through that backlog of cases by taking any case assigned to me. Because Multnomah County is our busiest trial court, and we need judges that are able to step on day one and handle any case that comes to the doors. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Juliet Breton. I too think that mental health, just like Diane said, should be a focus here. What we know is that over 65% of all defendants have either mental health or substance use disorders, which means, and 85% of the cases, or over 85% of the cases filed, are criminal. So all of our judges that are handling criminal cases really need to be above and beyond educated on these two particular issues. I also would love to see the judiciary take more of a leadership role in identifying what are the best practices across the United States and adopting them and taking the lead on implementing programs. We don't talk a lot about leadership skills in a judge. We talk about being fair. We talk about being a good attorney. But as somebody who's been a presiding judge, Absolutely, my leadership skills have allowed me to do some very innovative programs to stop that cycle of arrest and release and repeat. I have a nationally recognized drug treatment court. 1 in 10 courts were selected last year by the Treatment Court Institute. My court was the only Oregon court selected to do that, and that's because we had I led the charge. Let's go above and beyond the minimum best practices. To that end, behavioral health court also is an important topic that I think everyone entering this position should know about. Thank you.
Chris Bear. So I'm going to echo a few of the things that folks have already talked about. I do believe that treatment court is a very unique opportunity and model that I think our courts should, as an issue, expand upon. It is shown to be a very effective way to address people who are stuck in the criminal justice system. But what I would like to be expanded in that is the historical distrust that is often overcome by treatment courts and the participants can also be expanded to the behavioral health providers themselves. Often these courts are only as useful as the stakeholders that come to the table and help the participants actually receive the resources and have actually celebrate their successes through not just avoiding jail or avoiding repeat offenses, but actually thriving and achieving things that they've never achieved before. I believe that I can help bridge that gap because in my role as a step court, a brand new treatment court that I helped develop, I believe that we have had to reach out, bring providers in to overcome that systemic distrust that the courts are just going to lock folks up.
Hi, Laura Rowan. I would like to see the courts more involved in the expansion of mental health services to people who come into the community justice system, mostly because of their mental health diagnosis or, as mentioned before, alcohol and drug addiction. As it was stated in my bio, I was Multnomah County's first mental health deputy district attorney. And so I was part of the mental health court, which Judge Nan Waller, who is retiring and whose seat is now available, is currently running. In that role, I saw how much those wraparound services and intensive probation offerings could really help people get out of the criminal justice system and reach a level of stability in their lives when you treat the root causes. From that experience, I learned that there are things that the courts can do, such as make arrangements for someone to literally walk the person who was in the courtroom that day to their doctor's appointment at the psychiatrist's office down, or to the social security office, or to the apartment to sign their lease. There is literally hand-holding that needs to be done, and I have seen that firsthand, and I would like to have the courts take that active role to serve those additional steps that may be missed, which can connect people to services, because the connection is the issue. And when people are connected to services, they do so much better.
Ooh, let's give it up for this first round of questions because they all we would stop. So now I'm going to politely ask our position 2 candidates to move aside and allow for our position 5 candidates to come forward.
Good question.
We'll get to questions after they all got through their first round of questions, and we'll go to audience questions after that.
That group.
Yes, they will come back up when we go to audience Q&A, because folks might have different questions for different positions.
Also hang out after. If you guys want to chat.
So, welcome in our candidates for position 5. Joe Paridi Abbott is a mom, an attorney, a law professor. Joe is the only candidate running to succeed Judge Christopher J. Marshall on the Multnomah County Circuit Court position 5. With the breadth and depth of experience to be ready to be on the job on day 1. Joe's 17-year legal career ranges from complex civil litigation to federal criminal defense to training lawyers at Oregon's top law school. Joe took on Amazon for their unfair non-compete practices and won as a civil litigator at Angeli Law Group. She fought for local business in trade, secret litigation, and Perkins Coie, and has defended the constitutional rights of individuals accused of crimes in federal and state court across her career. She now takes students and develops them into Oregon's next generation of trial attorneys as the director of Lewis and Clark Law School's Advocacy Center. So welcome, Joe. We also have John Castellino. John brings over 29 years of legal experience and a long record of dedicated public service to Oregon's most vulnerable. He began his legal career in civil practice before serving as a Multnomah County Deputy District Attorney, Chief Deputy District Attorney, Acting District Attorney in Klamath County, and Senior Assistant Attorney General in the Criminal Justice Division of the Oregon Department of Justice. Over the course of nearly 3 decades, he has focused on prosecuting child abuse and domestic violence cases, leading teams, improving systems, and training lawyers, child protection workers, law enforcement, and other system partners. He is a candidate for Multnomah County Circuit Court Position 5, emphasizing proven experience, fairness, efficiency, and access to justice in Oregon's courts. So welcome to our 2 candidates. For you all, your question is, with the state and counties all navigating budget shortfalls, where do you think they should make their investments in the court?
Okay, I grabbed the microphone first, so I'll start. I was sitting closest to it.
Little close.
Oh, closer to my mouth, yes. So we don't get to make budget decisions, but I can say what I think is most important in the courts as we face critical budget issues is that we're thoughtful about long-term ramifications. We need to think about what preventative things can be put in place that ultimately keep people out of prison, which costs $79,000 to $88,000 a year per person in prison. That's a lot of budget that if we can impose interventions early, that we can avoid. And those early interventions happen in criminal court, just like my colleagues were talking about in mental health court, but they also can happen at other points of intervention in the civil law system too. For example, there's a program called with the Commons Law Center for individuals to get day of representation in eviction court. If we can keep people in their houses on that day, rather than having them end up on the streets in a position where they're vulnerable, those are programs that, yes, they cost money up front, but if through the courts we can get that money and keep people in their houses right off the jump, then we are intervening in the system that could lead people to substance abuse disorder, mental health disorder, and bigger problems. That's just one example where I think the court, both on the criminal and civil side, has a real meaningful opportunity to intervene in people's lives at the first instance we see them in the courthouse when we have problems. And investing in that early intervention can keep us from those longer term, far greater budget expenditures that involve incarceration.
Thanks. Hey everyone, I'm John Castellino. In my experience in the courthouse, when we talk about investments for the future, we need to look at 3 things. 1, we want any investment to reduce delay. 2, we want an investment to increase access. And 3rd, we want an investment to strengthen the confidence that we have in our public justice system. Okay, and the ultimate goal, of course, would be that any investment we do reduces or lowers downstream costs. Okay, so now my proposal to you, or what we should invest in, is really something that is not grand at first. After 24 years of daily practice in the courthouse, the things that we need to invest in that keep things moving, we need to make sure that we have enough clerks. We need to make sure that we have enough courtroom staff. We need to invest in interpreters. When we don't have those investments, for example, in interpreters, that costs money. It diminishes the access to justice, It creates delay. How many times have you seen all the parties show up and that person, that litigant, doesn't have someone who speaks their language? And then we have to set it over and do it all over again. And of course, we need to invest in judges. And as you can see from this forum, there's no shortage of judicial candidates, right? But we need to make sure that at a per capita rate, we have the judges that will keep the workflow going. Because when those delays happen, when those workforce slowdowns happen, families have to wait, defendants have to wait, civil litigants have to wait, and that increases frustration with our courts. In terms of bigger picture things.
You gotta wrap it up.
All right, well, bigger picture things real quick. We need to invest in, of course, our mental health system, so we're not spending our dollars on costly jail beds and state hospital, but community treatment. And the two more things.
No.
So you are doing what a judge should do. Thank you very much.
No, this is what a volunteer facilitator does. No.
All right.
I'm not being hourly, so I cut us off right at time.
Okay.
Thank you, candidates for this five. I'm now gonna invite up our candidates for position 12. All right, so for our candidates for position 12, we have Judge Adrian Brown, was first elected to the Multnomah County Circuit Court in 2020. And for the past 5 years, she has presided over hundreds of criminal and civil cases and issued opinions that withstood appellate review. She is a U.S. Air Force veteran who served as a JAG Corps officer and went on to the U.S. Department of Justice, where she created the Civil Rights Coordinator position at the U.S. Attorney's Office. At a time when our democratic values are under attack, Judge Brown holds the line by upholding the rule of law, even under pressure. She is committed to protecting the democratic foundation of an independent judiciary. We also have Peter Klum. Peter, during his time at Multnomah Defense Inc., Peter represented over 500 clients in Multnomah County Circuit Court in thousands of hearings and dozens of trials. Peter has continued his public service at the Appellate Division of the Oregon Public Defense Commission, where he has represented hundreds of clients in the Oregon Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. At OPDC, Peter served as a union steward for AFSCME, helping colleagues navigate employment issues. Appointed by the Chief Justice Martha Walters, Peter serves on the Uniform Trial Court Rules Committee alongside judges and lawyers from across the state, drafting and amending the rules that guide local courts. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Your question, or your first question, I should say, is what is a relationship do you think the court is currently underutilizing?
Well, I've got the microphone, so I'll go first. Peter Clem. Multnomah County is a very big county. It stretches far to the east. It includes Corbett, Troutdale, Fairview, Gresham. And I think we're underutilizing our East County courthouse. We've got a beautiful new courthouse downtown, and that's great. But as a public defender, I see that East County residents are overrepresented, especially in the criminal justice system, but I believe in the civil system as well. And I think it's important that we use that courthouse out there to bring court to the people. It is very difficult to take a day off work or find childcare to go to a 20-minute hearing downtown where you're just going to get a new date to come back to court. And that's a burden that East County residents shouldn't have to bear, that other residents don't. We have a beautiful courthouse out there. Let's use it. I used to volunteer at the Rosewood Initiative doing expungement clinics, which I think is another very important way to bring the court to the community. We would have public defenders and district attorneys out there along with one judge, and we would process expungements for East County residents. And I think systems like that, where we bring the court to the people, is very important because Multnomah County is big, it's vast, and it shouldn't be so downtown centric.
He's not on my list. Why is he not?
I already explained that earlier. Not all candidates are in the voters pamphlet because they have to
Did you say
pay.
which ones? I mean, really, Peter Clem,
Yeah, can I ask that you be reminded that there's people online who are watching, so I want to make sure that we get through those. If you have a question, we do have some volunteers around the room that can answer your question on a sidebar. so we're not pausing the whole program.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting us. I think this is the first time we are all together in the same room, so it's pretty amazing. So I think that one of the things that's really important for judges and really all of us is to not assume what people want and need. But we need to get out in the community and make the question, ask the question. If we assume that we know, then we're going to probably get it wrong almost all the time. And I can speak from experience, not just as a judge for the last 5.5 years, the only elected judge here in this courtroom, but I can also speak from experience as a civil rights coordinator during 8 years under the Obama administration, where I helped create these positions throughout the country. And what we did was we went out and we talked to constituents. So while certainly my opponent's idea might be a great idea, let's talk to those residents out in East County. Let's ask them what they want. Let's go talk to Black, Brown, immigrant communities, the people who are scared to come downtown to our courthouse and find out what they want. That is something we have not done since the days of Judge Waller and Judge Albright leading our court. We really need to bring back the idea of community and making sure that we are getting out there in it off the bench. There has been a assertion that, well, we need judges who can work day one, and that's absolutely true. A work study that we did with the court in October of 2020 found that we are short 13 judges in Multnomah County. 13. We're lucky to get one from the legislature.
Awesome. Thank you to our candidates for position 12. And just to remind you folks, these candidates will all come up again to answer another question before we go into audience Q&A. So if you do have a cue card or you have a question, please make sure to raise your cue card in the air so that one of our volunteers can come by and grab them from you. So for our candidates coming from position 14, you can come up to the front here, take a seat. And I will introduce you all. What? Yeah, stay in the middle here. Okay. Perfect. All right. First, we have Christine Almquist. Christine was raised in Southern Oregon's Rogue Valley in a home her parents built themselves. Christine grew up in a family grounded in hard work and community values. Growing up in a working household instilled in her a strong sense of responsibility, discipline, and the importance of treating people fairly. For more than 16 years, Christine has focused on juvenile law and issues affecting families involved in court system, including 11 years as a public defender representing parents and children during some of the most difficult moments of their lives. Today, she serves as a full-time juvenile hearing referee and judge pro tem in Multnomah County. And she is running because the courts need judges who are steady, impartial, and prepared to serve. Next, we have Joe Hagedorn. Joe Smith Bio says on his first day on the judicial bench, started over 6 years ago when he began work as a full-time judge pro tem / referee, making decisions every day that affect the lives of children and families. He brings proven experience, deep knowledge of the law, and a hard work ethic to every case that he hears. He has spent over 24 years practicing law as a public defender and AmeriCorps legal aid attorney, giving him a broad perspective on the complex issues families bring before the court. He is proud to be endorsed by the Willamette Week, Oregonian, and Portland Mercury. 26 Multnomah County judges and over a dozen elected officials, organizations, and community leaders that serve or have served the people of Multnomah County. Next, we have Bradford Kirk. Brad is an Oregonian that has been, Oregon has been home for him from the beginning, growing up in Bend and Prineville, studying in Monmouth and Eugene, and having lived in Salem, Milwaukee, and Portland. He's been practicing law in Oregon for 23 years, and of all the candidates running for this seat, he brings the most experience in family law, which matters because this is a family law bench spot. Since 2009, he has been working with some amazing people and doing amazing work at Goldberg Jones, a family law firm in downtown Portland. Over the last 10 years, his passions have shifted from playing adult kids sports like dodgeball and kickball to watching his kids play those same sports. Next, we have Heidi Brown, who is joining us online. Heidi has been an attorney for over 30 years, handling hundreds of jury and court trials, with nearly a decade in domestic relations court, 4 years in juvenile court, 10 years as a criminal law attorney, and more than a decade handling civil law matters. Her experience in both domestic relations and juvenile law uniquely equip her for success in the position 14 judge, because it is a family court position where 70 to 80% of the cases are domestic relations and a remainder are juvenile cases. In her current role as a chief deputy city attorney, she has remained calm and composed and has treated the people with respect and dignity amidst their fear and anger while working on some of the most challenging issues of the city, including sanctuary city policy, policing, and equity matters. And she'll bring the same qualities to family court where people can face some of the most difficult moments of their lives. All right, and then apologies here, my screen got split for these last two candidates. Oh, all right. We have Elizabeth Savage. Elizabeth is an Oregon native attorney and pro tem judge with 12 years of legal practice. She currently serves as a pro tem judge in Washington County, a court-appointed arbitrator in Multnomah County, and a pro bono child attorney through the Children's Representation Project. Before law, she was a Peace Corps volunteer in Cameroon and a high school teacher in the Mississippi Delta. She enjoys spending time with her family in Portland and is running for Multnomah County Circuit Court Position 14. And then, ooh, sorry folks, like I said, split screen. What was this? So, and just a reminder, folks, all of these bios that I am reading to you right now are from what the candidates sent me over. And for those who did not have a chance to send me over something, I pulled stuff together from their website. So, excuse me while I grab this last one for Michael Lee. Here we are. Ooh, sorry, folks. It did not want to participate with me. So, Michael is born and raised proud Oregonian and son of South Korean immigrants who built their lives here through sacrifice, perseverance, and an unwavering belief in opportunity. Growing up here shaped his understanding of community. As a violinist with the Portland Youth Philharmonic, he learned that every person carries responsibility and that real harmony comes from listening as much as leading. He is running for a judge because our courts require more than legal knowledge. They require patience, impartiality, and a steady commitment to apply the law fairly to everyone who walks through the courtroom doors. When he is not working, you'll find him spending time with his family on the golf course or riding Oregon's open roads on his motorcycle. So welcome to Michael Lee. And for our position 14 candidates, again, folks, if you hadn't noticed a running theme through their profiles, position 14 is uniquely the position in the courts that handles family law. So that's why you heard a lot of them talk about their family law experience. So with that, candidates, your question is, what is an area that you think the court could be improving in?
Okay, looks like I'll start. Can you hear me okay? It doesn't sound like it's on. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So my name is Joe Hagedorn, and I'm a judge pro tem for the last 6 years. My focus has been on juvenile court, and where I think we have a lot of things that work there. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is we have this program that the courts run, which is the juvenile, it's called JSIP, the Juvenile Court Improvement Program. And that program really, it focuses on training lawyers, educating lawyers, and anyone that really works in the juvenile courts. And I think that that has been a big success. So talking about in juvenile court, what works, what things would I like? And I think the focus that people want to focus in on is the things that are happening in family law, right? And the problem with family law is if we have somewhere in the range of 70 to 80% of the folks that are unrepresented, self-represented litigants. And so that's going to be a huge problem in family law unless you have people that really understand how to work with those folks, right? And so I think that is my concern. And I think that also is one of the problems when people talk about the courts being that they're jammed up, that people can't get access, they can't get into court. I think that's where we have that problem. And I think that needs to be addressed. One of the ways that I think we need to address that is in this, okay, I gotta hurry up. Sorry about that. One of the ways that I think we need to address that is really talking about a program that's very similar, kind of a model work or a model program like JSIP.
It's me next, all right. Hi, everyone, Michael Lee here. So I'll reference something that Joe Hagedorn or Referee Hagedorn here said, which is many people that come to family law court are self-represented, which means the attorneys up here, the pro tem judges up here don't see those people because the majority of cases that come before the family law court happen to be domestic relations. So divorce, child custody, alimony, those kinds of issues. Now, you'll probably see in my bio, if you check out my campaign website, I'm not a family law practitioner. I've been a deputy district attorney for 10 years, handling criminal cases from misdemeanors to murders. Currently, I'm responsible for prosecuting juvenile offenders who are accused of sex crimes. I'm the only deputy DA in the county that handles these kinds of cases. And that's how I've been exposed to juvenile law, which piqued my interest in family law. When I was poking around the county website, the circuit court website, it's not particularly user-friendly or easy to navigate for those that are trying to find the right forms for family law so they can handle their own matters. I think the court needs to look at the website from a customer service perspective, from folks who are not legally trained, and make it easier to find the correct forms, because family law is a form-heavy, form-driven practice, because things have to be written down, ordered by the judge. Because, you know, as you can imagine, a child care plan or a child custody plan must be written down to a certain degree, right? There's minimum stuff that needs to go into that plan written down. And so these forms are important. They're hard to find. They're not in all the languages that need to be on that website. And I think the court needs to do better in that regard for access to justice for all these folks who are unrepresented coming to the court to try to get their matters resolved.
Thank you. Brad Rookie. I've been doing this for a while, and one of the things that I see in Multnomah County specifically is the barrier of knowing when you're actually going to go to court. Multnomah County has a call docket where everybody shows up and you find out if you're going to have a judge. And that call docket is a call in, and it's not easy to find the number if you can't find it. I'm an attorney and I have trouble finding that phone number when I try to look for it. And I should know where to look. And then once you're on that call and the judge may say you don't have enough judges, and so it gets kicked out and it keeps getting pushed on. And if you say, I need more time than the court has for, you might find that you are told at that point, we can't handle this case this way. You need to get specially set in front of a judge. And then you're waiting for another 6 months to go. And that's a communication issue at the core, because I think it's hard for the unrepresented party to know exactly how to navigate this field beyond just filing the paperwork. The paperwork gets you in the door. What you really want is to get in front of a judge. And it is hard, I think, for people to actually get in front of the judge to plead their case. And it takes a long time to get to that point. The state has made these goals of getting cases done in a year, and it's regularly not getting done in a year. And that's a real problem. And I think that can be streamlined through this process to have more check-ins with the people so that we don't have everybody showing up if they don't need to be there, and really streamline the process. I'm gonna kick it to Heidi now as I pass the mic to the other end.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Heidi Brown. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I think there's three things that we could do to improve the court system right now. One that I think is really critical for all judges and all attorneys is to be sure they're trauma informed. In family court, the challenges that people bring are complex and interconnected. They include poverty, housing insecurity, mental health, intergenerational trauma. And so I think it's critical that courts have that trauma-informed approach, particularly in family court. This can foster healthier relationships between children and their parents, and really finding ways to connect children and families to their community so that we're all helping one another. Secondly, I think expediting the process. As Brad was just talking about, things are delayed in court, and it's really critical that we ensure that all parties, and especially unrepresented parties, people who don't have an attorney and who are seeking a divorce, are able to do so without an unnecessary delay. Part of the trauma I think people experience in a divorce can be exacerbated by extended periods without resolution. And I think in order to expedite domestic relations matters, it's important that judges understand what child support and spousal support should look like, how to divide property, what custody and visitation should look like, and having experience in domestic relations matters. And then lastly is reinstating Multnomah County's New Ways for Families program. That program was temporarily paused in 2024 and hasn't been reinstated. And I think it's important that we do. It helped with co-parenting, helped promoting respectful communication and negotiating decisions in divorce. So all those things I think are very important for courts to improve. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Heidi, and then we'll come back into the room.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Savage. I think my colleagues all raised excellent points. Once there is an assigned judge, after you get out of that docketing, I think that scheduling trials and hearings in a consolidated and efficient manner would really ease families' trauma through this process. In my 12 years of experience, I've had cases, multiple cases that go on for months and years because we have a half day here, and a day over here 3 months later, and so on and so forth. Whereas I've seen other judges that will say, okay, we're not gonna hear this until July. Well, we're gonna hear 3 days and this is your time. When we have bits and pieces of a trial or a hearing that's spread out over isolated days, the facts change on the ground. And meanwhile, the parties continue to have conflict, and the person who is caught in the middle is often the child, and that is the person who's suffering. A case like that could go on forever because the facts are always going to evolve. So really managing that courtroom judge by judge is really important. I've seen what a difference it truly makes to have those trials and hearings consolidated, and similarly to have a quick time to judgment. So once that trial has occurred, for the parties to wait around for months to get a final judgment, I think can be really problematic. Again, without that finality, the parties continue to stress, they continue to incur legal fees, and the children are really the ones who suffer.
All right, I'm Christine Almquist again, and so with regard to improvement in court, it's something that I'm actually already involved in as a full-time referee and judge pro tem. I currently am the co-chair of the Multnomah County Model Court Team, and many counties within Oregon have a model court team. The model court team that I'm involved in is specific to dependency. We're getting ready in Multnomah County to get off the ground a delinquency model court team that's being headed with Judge Gates. And these teams are really important for change in solving problems within our courts because we look at systematic issues. Many of the ones that almost everyone here has already addressed in one way or another, via access or even the smallest things of having the appropriate interpreter or having them there before certain types of hearings, particularly shelter hearings and dependency matters, so that the folks that are showing up actually have access to their attorney before they go into the courtroom. So I really like that type of work because it brings stakeholders together, and folks within the court system, who hopefully can know best how to identify the issues that need to be addressed are working together. One project we're currently working on in the dependency model court is access via phone or WebEx or more remote appearances. I think in other counties that's utilized really well. In Multnomah County, we don't utilize that as much, at least in the juvenile courthouse. So there's a statewide group going on, and then we have a small group addressing that as well. And it's an access issue. And I think someone earlier said it's some of the smallest things that can make access difficult. Being able to call in on the phone, because of what folks have to go through even to make it to court. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you to our candidates looking to serve in position 14. We're going to go to our second question now. So I'm going to invite candidates for position 5 to now come up. And folks, if you have questions again that you've written down, please get them over to Sally, who's here in the front, so that Sally can pass them to me. If you have questions you've written down, please get those to Sally, who's here in the front, or ask to get those to me. All right, so we're starting with position 5 because y'all went second in the first one, so now I need to go first in this one. So this one is a very large question, and just so folks in the audience know, as well as those online, for this second question will be asked of all of the candidates in all of the positions. So we'll hear from all of them about how they want to answer this question. Also, keep in mind that this question is meant to get folks in the room thinking. So if they want to come and find you to mingle with you as soon as we're done with the audience Q&A, think about this as your nice teaser trailer as a candidate to get people to want to come up and talk to you afterwards. So, given we know there are disparities in our legal criminal justice system, whether it be by race, mental health, homelessness, etc., do you think that judges have a role in addressing those disparities? And if so, what role?
Hey everyone, John Castellino again. Absolutely. This is something that has been sort of debated in among legal scholars, but in Multnomah County, we put it into practice. We already have a system where judges are addressing and taking, it's part of our architecture on how cases are resolved, looking at disparities, trying to eliminate them. No longer are judges just sort of appliers of the law, but they are people who actually are the social service coordinators in court. We've all seen it. My 24 years in the Multnomah County Courthouse, think about it. When someone comes into the courtroom, often that's the only time that they have contact with an institution. I wish I could say that I came up with this idea, but my daughter explained it to me this way. The court system sort of acts like the sorting hat in Harry Potter, right? The judge is the one who decides, does this person need mental health services? Does this person need help with addiction? Or is there something else that maybe another sort of correction needs to be done, right? Multnomah County has done this, it's in every court appearance, it's in every hearing, and we see it manifest itself maybe in sentencing where judges can take into account a person's background. We see it in terms of services like the problem-solving courts that we already have in our architecture of the court system, mental health court, veteran court, right? We're taking everyone's lived experience and trying to fashion some sort of resolution or help because, again, it is often the only contact that people have in our community. That's unfortunate, that's the way it is, but we can use the courts to make citizens and residents actually get the services they need and address those disparities. And we've talked about many of them.
You're at
This is time I'm saying I'm done. Thank you so much.
So when I saw this question on the list of questions, I thought it was an interesting time to receive this question because just last week, the US Supreme Court tried to tell us that racism is over. And we don't need to be thinking about it anymore, right? They were undoing the Voting Rights Act in a really terrifying way. But those of us who have lived experience on the ground in our communities know that that is so far from true, that disparity is real, disparity exists, and disparity needs to be considered in in all systems, in all structural systems we have, including the court systems. As judges, we have a responsibility, whether it's civil or criminal cases, to see the person in front of us and all of their lived experiences as they bring it to the courtroom. My family law colleagues talked about the amount of pro se litigants they see in family law. It's coming in civil courts too. We're seeing 1 out of 5, almost 1 out of 5 individuals showing up without a lawyer to handle some of the most significant matters in their lives, right? And those are things that is income driven. They can't afford an attorney, and we need a system that considers that and shows up ready to see every person who walks in as a whole person from their lived experience and consider that in how we are addressing their needs within the court. So respectfully to the highest court in the land, I don't think racism is over, and we do need to be ready to tackle it in a real way in the courts here in state court.
Thank you, Candace, for position 5. I'll now bring it back up, Candace, for position 12. I appreciate all the candidates for keeping the time and doing so with grace.
All right. Judge Brown, and I think that there is a lot that we can do to help these systems that are really intertwining. I have seen this in my courtroom every day. There are some things that we have seen change in, and there are some things where we have just kind of stalled out. And this is an area where we've definitely stalled out in the systems that intersect between mental health, homelessness, racism. We absolutely must pay attention to these issues as they come in the court. The problem that we have is we are drinking through a fire hose, and we are expected to move cases. In fact, there has been criticism that I sometimes stop and want to ask some questions and make sure that I get things done right. But I have found that is how judges can lead, with courage, by asking the individual who's sitting before me, do you have a place to stay tonight when you're released from jail? How are you going to stay on your Suboxone when you're released from jail? These are questions that we can assume someone else is taking care of. But that is when we get in trouble. Assuming. We must be willing to ask the question and follow that thread. Oftentimes the attorneys that are appearing before us don't know anything more than they need to know for that moment right then and there. And we can't blame them for that. They're also drinking through a fire hose, right? We have a public defender crisis. We have shortages of DAs. We need to be able to help lead people through that.
Peter Clem again. So the answer to the question is yes, judges certainly have a role in addressing the disparities that we're seeing. And when we talk about institutional racism, for instance, one of the institutions we're talking about is the court system. So we can't look away from that. Really, the disparities that we see in the criminal justice system, they start with over-policing certain communities. Then there's district attorney charging decisions, and then eventually you get to the court. And what individual judges can do to try to help address the disparities that we see in our system is to hold the state to their burden when it comes to either trials or motions to suppress, for instance. We should not be making any assumptions about a defendant that sits in front of you, whether they're houseless, whether they're a person of color, or whether they have a substance abuse problem. You can't skip any elements just because of what that person looks like or where they come from. And by holding the state to their burden, we can help at the edges address these disparities.
Thank you so much, our candidates for position 12. I'm going to invite our candidates from position 14 to come up to answer the question. And then that means position 2, you were on deck. And then just a quick reminder, please make sure to say your name before you answer the question to remind folks of which candidate you are. So whenever you're ready, I'm gonna read the question again. Given we know there are disparities in our legal criminal justice system, whether it's by race, mental health, homelessness, etc., do you think judges have a role in addressing those disparities, and if so, what role?
I was really hoping to go last on this one. I'll be honest on that. And that's just because this is a different judgeship. So I've been really struggling with this question, how to bring this answer to the family law bench. And part of the background of the family law bench is every judge, when you make a ruling, you're acting in a court of equity. You're supposed to do right by people. You're supposed to take into consideration their lived experiences and make sure that they're coming out of the situation not disproportionately harmed to the other parent or the other family member. And so there is always going to be taken into consideration as just a pure function of the family law judge, taking into consideration and addressing these inequities. We have, spousal support is one of the things that we also do in family law, which is designed to eliminate the inequities between the working spouse and the spouse that's been the stay-at-home parent. So these kind of things are always going to be part of the family law bench. So this is a very different answer in the way I'm addressing it than I think the other judges are, because I think the family law bench is going to face these issues in a very different way. We've talked about, being trauma informed and things like that. And that's part of that background, is knowing that the people that we are dealing with, we are seeing them in their most vulnerable because we're dealing with their families, and these are the worst days of their lives because they have to come to a judge to address these things. And I have to, as a judge, balance these things and tell these people, as an outsider, what's a fair resolution. I have to do equity by these people. They're not always going to like the results that they come down from, but I've got to take that role very seriously.
Thank you. And to kind of continue on about how the family law bench is different, it's unique in that all of the cases that Mr. Gerke just described, the family law cases, that's a large part of the cases that a judge hears on the family law bench. But in addition, also dependency cases, which are cases where families are impacted by child welfare, meaning families that maybe have had a child removed and their child might be in foster care. And then we have the third subset of cases, which are our juvenile delinquency cases, which really mirror adult criminal cases in a lot of ways. However, the codes for juvenile delinquency are different in many ways that allow judges great flexibility in decisions that we make. So there's these three very different types of cases, but all three of those cases really surround and go to the heart of families. So again, does a judge have a role? Absolutely. Because in each one of those instances, all of those issues, be it houselessness, substance abuse, maybe there's domestic violence, any mental health issues, the judicial officer that's hearing all of those three types of cases is constantly going to be having to look at those issues and see where maybe services need to be ordered in one case. And I'll just wrap up by saying many people that come into my courtroom, be it in a delinquency case, a dependency case, and sometimes even if you're on the restraining order docket, they always say, I've been reaching out for help. I've already been looking for help. I try to get mental health services for my child. And so there's always that need for the judicial officer to be involved in what folks need. And really, we need to listen to them because they know what's best for their families.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth Savage. I think all the candidates are going to say yes as an answer to this question, which is not nothing. I think it says a lot about who these candidates are and who we are as a county. It's really important when addressing these disparities that people can't help, that they come into these situations with, that we look inward and question our own implicit bias, because all of us have implicit bias, whether we want to admit it to ourselves or not. I've been lucky enough to live in various communities in crisis in the Mississippi Delta, where right after Brown versus Ford versus education, they took all the white kids and put them in state-funded private school. In Cameroon, where at the time I was there, about a third of the population, adult population, was HIV positive. And in New Orleans, right after Katrina, when people were rebuilding their lives, I've seen people in all states from all walks of lives, and I've lived and worked alongside those communities. But that's not to say that I know everything. What that is to say is, I know what it's like to feel different. And I also know that every judge needs to think about what their own preconceived ideas are that they're bringing to the bench and really step back and examine those. People come scared, we've heard that from everybody, and it's true. What they need is transparency and needs somebody to guide them with clarity and consistency through what is otherwise a very scary process. Thank you.
I'm going to say yes to that question. One of the things, juvenile, I get the idea, and I think that people sometimes misunderstand really what's happening in juvenile court. It's very similar in a lot of respects, the same disparities that you have in the criminal courts, and finding ways to address that. There are really some of the same methods. I think looking at the courts in general, I think one of the ways to address the disparities has been the court, I'm more hopeful about this, is that the court has been addressing disparities through mental health court, has been addressing disparities through the substance use courts. And so I think those are two of the biggest things. One of the things I also think about is probably 10, 15 years ago, I remember Judge Waller, who was on the family law bench for a long time, and she was also, she's now in the mental health court, but she was excited about this implicit bias test. And she wanted everyone to take it to really understand that we all have biases, right? So I think for me, I'm really hopeful that the court continues to think about these issues and continues to make efforts and has made progress in doing that. One of the ways that just to measure progress is we have, when you do your jury orientation, you have a training for implicit bias. So I think, the idea is we are making progress in this area.
Hi, everyone. Michael Lee again, and I both like and hate that I'm going second to last, because all my fellow candidates have said such wonderful things. Of course, I also agree, yes, judges have a place and a purpose in addressing these issues. Like Referee Hagedorn said, family law is going to be a little different. But as I referenced my previous answer, a lot of folks come into family law, which the majority of the cases are domestic relations. And the majority of them are also unrepresented, right? They represent themselves. So for a family law judge, my argument would be that cultural competence, cultural awareness is one of the biggest things that a judge can have. Judges, I think, have a moral duty to continue educating themselves about these things so that they are aware of how these biases, implicit biases, or the overlay of their own lived experiences onto litigants may not be appropriate, because everybody has different lived experiences, they have different cultures, which a judge should and must be aware of when they make decisions that impact lives and especially impact children. In addition to that, also having awareness and competence when it comes to mental health and substance abuse issues, all those things that kind of intersect in family and all the special things that are part and parcel to families and all the sticky relationships that come with that, I think is very important for a family law judge to be aware of, constantly testing their own biases, educating themselves, looking at the latest research to make sure that they are making informed decisions that are in line with the latest and best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll go to candidate Heidi Brown on virtual.
Thank you very much. Again, Heidi Brown. Yeah, judges, I think, have an important role in addressing disparities. And I think that's by first ensuring that they check their own biases. I think judges need to continuously practice being anti-racist, understanding mental illness, recognizing gender disparities. Those really come up in family law cases, and being aware of those and challenging ourselves not only to be aware of them, but also to be continuously learning and educating ourselves about how those disparities show up. And I think only by seeing these disparities and being a lifetime learner can we have a positive impact on them. In family law issues, we can face people who are dealing with being unhoused, people who are dealing with racism all their lives, and how that impacts the way they see the court and how they view whether they've had a just day in court. Decisions about custody, parenting time, and child support, spousal support. All these things that can be affected by mental health challenges, by housing instability, by economic hardship. A judge needs to be able to craft orders that take into account how these challenges people have faced are playing out before them, and how they can help support families going through a divorce or going through the juvenile court system, and structuring parenting plans, allowing flexibility, ensuring continued contact when you're dealing with somebody with a more significant mental health issue. Sometimes these come on later in life for people, and ensuring that we address those and support people and understand how that can play out. And so I think understanding your own biases and how they impact the ways that we might support people as they're ending their marriage, as they're ending their relationships with each other, but also fostering a relationship with their children is critical. Thank you.
Thank you. And so give it up for our candidates. Now, position two. Sorry, I'll reread the question again.
Switch it up.
Don't go further than the mic. That's it, further past the mic.
That's sorry.
No, see, that's the further past the mic. That's the further past the mic.
I see.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, God.
There.
I'm gonna scoot over one.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go for one, but there you go.
Oh, sorry.
Either way.
Wow, this is.
Yep.
How many words?
Oh, let's see. Open seat, just like the race, open seat, just take the open seat. All right. So given that we know there are disparities in our legal criminal justice system, whether it be race, mental health, homelessness, etc., do you think judges have a role in addressing those disparities? And if so, how?
This is on agenda, and like many of my colleagues, I think the answer is yes. I think the approach is twofold, or at least as I see it. The first is being a judge that has a welcoming and open courtroom that is accessible to everyone, regardless of their background. And that means being aware of your implicit biases, responding to them, and making sure that everyone feels and has the supports that they need in order to access the courts. You know, I'm the son of immigrants, and I know what it's like, both from my personal family experience and watching my parents, to see people try to access institutions that were not necessarily designed for them. And I will bring that with me to the bench. I will also say that I think that judges should have an active role in supporting access to justice in the courts, and I've really walked the walk on this. I'm the vice president of the Multnomah Bar Foundation, which funds all sorts of wonderful programming out of the courthouse. It funds and runs wonderful programming out of the courthouse. The one that's most prominent is that there is a free drop-in childcare at the downtown courthouse that litigants that have court dates can utilize to make sure they can make those court dates without having to worry about childcare. And importantly, making sure that their children are not sitting in on the court hearings in which some pressing family law matter, which a child should not be listening to, might be being heard. To date, that program has served nearly 20,000 children. So each one of those is a court date that could have been missed but for it being there.
You're at time, so for I hope you're second.
All right, fair enough. I've got all sorts of other things that I've worked on in this area, and I'm happy to chat about those afterwards. Thank you.
I am Chris Bear. I think that a judge definitely has a role to play in addressing disparities. And I think that the best thing that a judge can do is bring compassion and dignity to the bench. I am honored to be pursuing the seat of Judge Waller. She has transformed the court system with that exact same temperament of compassion and giving dignity to those who come before her. I think that I can bring to the bench this compassion by having lived and worked with people who are at their darkest times, people who are in crisis. My entire career has been spent representing folks in vulnerable populations, victims of crime, people dealing with substance use disorders, mental health disorders. My background stretches all the way back to my father who struggled with mental illness. The way that a court can receive their litigants and approach it with compassion is to have lived those lives, to have seen people struggle, to really have taken on some of that secondary trauma, having been with those folks throughout their career. I hope that the implicit bias trainings that everyone is talking about, is a real thing, and is implemented at all levels in the court system.
Great. Laura Rowan again. The answer is yes, absolutely. I think that ways in which judges can address this issue is, one way that Judge Waller, whose seat we're running for, she always explained to all the parties what to expect from the hearing before the hearing happened. So just leveling the playing field from the beginning so that people feel comfortable and that they have a sense of what to expect. Whether they're represented, whether they've been in court a million times, whether they've never been in court before. Also through my work, having worked with victims of domestic violence and human trafficking, I have been in crisis. I have been with them in the moment of crisis. I have been in the hotel rooms interrupting human trafficking, talking to victims about where to meet them in that moment. I have met with victims of domestic violence in shopping malls because they were too scared to come to the courthouse to explain to me what happened and trying to ease their nerves about coming to court to testify against someone who hurt them. Judges have an active role in settling a lot of criminal cases. And in order to do that, they need to be able to sit with people and hear their story, even if it's not an experience that they have themselves lived. And through my work experience, I have had a lot of contact and exposure to a lot of people's different experiences. And I think that that can help bring the systems together, that understanding, that compassion and empathy to help to break down some of those disparities and get people's needs met.
Hi, Julia Britton again. I just want to talk about the ways that I've actually done this in my work. I agree with my colleagues on everything they've said. It is imperative that in every decision we make, every program we roll out, every forum that we make available to the public, what our website says, always has that lens of, are we excluding anyone by the very nature of the content? It's important to get diverse perspectives when you are rolling out new programs. It's important to have multidisciplinary teams, right? If everyone looks like me and it has my same background making these decisions, we're going to miss out on opportunities to be inclusive. And so it's important that we're inclusive when we make decisions in our courtroom. Personally, I've used data quite a bit to help drive some of my access to justice changes. I was noticing in my treatment court that our Spanish-speaking defendants were recidivating and violating at a higher rate. So to that end, we brought in native Spanish-speaking clinicians, both substance abuse and therapy, Spanish-speaking peers, Spanish-speaking police probation officers, which really made a great impact on those particular participants. I've also pulled our women out and have a separate docket for women to address the trauma that 90% of women in the criminal justice system experience as a child. And so using that data to help kind of drive our decisions is important.
Thank you, Diane Sykes. Yes, absolutely. Judges play a role in ensuring fairness and making sure that populations that marginalized populations, vulnerable populations are integrally involved in the process. I have dedicated my career to representing the most vulnerable populations through my work in civil rights. I started out representing Hispanic clients in criminal defense matters using interpreter services, but there are more languages that are represented in legal service or interpreter services, indigenous languages. Expansion there is very important, but ultimately the judge's job is to apply the law to the facts with integrity, consistency, without bias, and the concept of procedural justice or procedural fairness, the concept that every person deserves to have an explanation about the process, understand the decisions that a judge makes that are articulated clearly so that people walk away from the process, and even though they don't agree with the outcome, they felt that the process was pure. And studies reflect that more paramount than the outcome, the perception of justice by the community is whether the process was fair. And so while applying the rule of law, being mindful of that, I will bring that lens based on the populations that I have served throughout my entire career, working with community partners to make sure that the outcomes and the process is informed is going to be incredibly important, and removing barriers to access to justice is equally going to be important, and I'm committed to doing that.
See, so you all can stay up there, because we're now moving into audience questions, so it's easier to just keep the group that's up there for the first one. So, how we're gonna do this is, there are 2 questions that I'll ask for this position too. And then we'll go through the other positions where I'll also ask them 2 questions. One is meant to be a very quick lightning question that should not take you more than 5 seconds to answer. And the other is a question that I will hold you to 1 sentence per part of the question. Again, this is so that we can get out of here and let you all chat with the people who are here in the room one-on-one to answer more direct questions. Because I have definitely gotten some direct questions in this stack, but I'm gonna keep to the ones that I feel like are applicable to everyone across our race. So, panel number 2, your lightning question. What is your party registration?
Democrat.
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 Democrat. Democrat.
Great. Great modeling, group number 2. I appreciate that. So for your second question here. With 1 sentence, what is your greatest strength? Oh, sorry. With 1 sentence, what is an endorsement that you are most proud of that you've received? And for your second part of that question, what is a learning curve that you foresee for yourself when on the bench?
For me, it's the Oregon Judges Association. It's my colleagues at the 120 other local courts that have endorsed me. I've spent 4 years leading that organization and feel honored to have that endorsement. And the second question?
Learning curve for you as you approach the bench.
Absolutely, just learning the operations of a much larger court. You know, my court is a city court that only is responsible for Beaverton's 2,000 a year criminal cases. So for me, it's going to be learning just the sheer volume and operation complexity of a much larger court.
It's hard to choose a proudest, an endorser I'm most proud of. But I will say, Judge Nan Waller, whose position we're all running for, has endorsed me in this race, and I'm very proud to have her support. As for the learning curve, though I practice both criminal and civil law, I have much more experience with criminal law, and so there will be a learning curve with civil law if I win the election.
I'd say that my most proud endorsements are the workers. Local 88 of AFSCME represents all of the workers, staff at the court, the clerks, the folks who work at the DA's office. These are people who see the system actually work. You know, I got vetted by them. They don't obviously choose me for a title or for favors. It was something that they honored me with. As far as the learning curve, I'm excited to actually have a workload that is slightly less than my current workload, and learning to slow down and take my time and enjoy the deliberation process rather than the workload of a public defender.
Thank you. Anna Jindal again. It's hard to pick one, but I think the endorsement that I'm most proud of that leaps to mind is from Judge Anna Joyce on the Oregon Court of Appeals. She's a former Solicitor General for the state and has been a friend of and mentor of mine since I moved to Oregon. So I was really proud to have that. As far as the biggest learning curve, my practice is primarily civil cases, although I've done some criminal work. And I think that transitioning to being a general civil and criminal judge will include learning the processes and procedures behind the criminal cases. I will say that there is a long and rich history of people coming from a civil background and being highly effective criminal judges and leaders on the bench. I've been speaking with many of those judges about what they've done in order to become leaders on the criminal bench, and I think I'll be ready to do that.
Diane Sykes, with respect to endorsements, I would say retired Judge Angel Lopez, who started out as a criminal defense attorney, taught me how to do jury trials, and then when he got on the bench, reflected positively within the community, created a very inclusive courtroom, particularly when it came to people who were didn't speak English. He created a space that instilled confidence in communities that might not otherwise feel that way in a courtroom. And Judge Melvin Oden-Orr, who currently serves on the bench, also has had a profound impact on my perception of justice, working to infuse DEI and equity into the court process. One thing that I will work actively towards is ensuring that I am aware of all pretrial release programs and treatment courts services to make sure that each person who walks into my courtroom can avail themselves to that. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to our candidates for position 2. I'm now going to invite our candidates for position 14. Great job, everyone. And again, I deeply do appreciate this game of musical chairs that you all have been doing this whole time to accommodate for space.
Thank you again.
All right. So for group 14, you have the same first lightning question, which is your candidate party registration.
Democrat. Oh, hold on. Democrat.
In ever hopes that we'll have a third party, I'm actually a libertarian.
Democrat.
Democrat.
I am a Republican.
And then Heidi, you want to come off mute?
I was enthralled, sorry. I'm a Democrat, thank you.
Perfect. Then for our family court judges. Okay. So for the family court judges, I'll try to again get you to say this within like 60 seconds so we have time afterwards. But what is one way you hope to affect issues regarding juveniles and also folks without representation in front of you, considering is the worst day of their life, aka some practices of trauma-informed practice that you hope to have on the bench? I know it's a big question, I'm sorry.
I'll try to keep my answer short. So for juveniles, I think the important thing is we're reducing recidivism and we're teaching them accountability, right? The studies have already shown that juveniles tend to age out of committing crimes as they become adults, which is great. I think the important thing is to make sure that they're heard, that they're seen, that they feel like that they have some agency in this process that will impact their ability to be successful. In my experience in dealing with juveniles and with crime victims, a lot of them just want to be heard, they want to be seen, and as a judge, you have the power to do that very effectively in your courtroom because you control your court. I'm sorry, was there another question?
No, that was it. Grateful.
So with regard to juvenile delinquency, which is right now a large part of what I hear in my courtroom, but will be a smaller part of the cases I would hear if elected to be on the family law bench. So the statutes and the case law that we have here in Oregon actually gives judges great flexibility and when we're working with young people. So I just to give an example, if a young person, say they have entered a plea and then they're your probationer, we have the ability to work with the family, ask the youth themselves, work with their family, ask the family, what do they need in order for this young person to be successful and not come back into the system? And we have lots of creative ways to do that, as stated. And so I think that's just one of the great pieces of being in the juvenile court and being able to utilize those resources and get those services and resources to the families.
Elizabeth Savage, one of the biggest factors as far as whether a person is likely to reoffend is how they feel like they were treated in the courtroom. And having respect for the youth offender makes such a big difference as far as their understanding what's happening to them, feeling like justice is being done to them as opposed to understanding the process. The same goes for unrepresented parties in family law cases. I think so much of this comes down to communication. As a pro tem, I take a few minutes at the beginning, and it doesn't take long to go through the statute, the factors I'll need to find, and then a few ground rules for how we're going to proceed. Everybody gets their chance to talk. And then at the end, I talk about the facts I heard, the testimony and the witnesses, the documents over here, and how those facts apply to each of those factors. In knowing how the facts apply to the law, you can see a light go on. People understand what happened instead of feeling like justice was done to them.
I think for the juvenile question, I think the idea is to follow the data. And the data is really contrary to the way we think about things, especially with kids that, so putting them in detention, for example, has really bad results down the line. And so we really need to reorient how we think about things. And again, think and trust in the data for that. As far as the self-represented problem in the courts, I really agree with Ms. Savage a lot about that, which is to make your courtrooms comfortable, make sure that you have, you have materials that are prepared for self-represented litigants, that you've gone over those materials, that you are giving people access and time, that you're trying to explain things to them. It takes a lot of energy to be able to do that, but it is very worth it for people to be able to feel heard.
So part of that would be in the juvenile side of things. I was more thinking of a dependency side of things and ensuring that the parents and the caregivers have not just the resources, but the support of the court to help bring the children back into a loving home, help give them the resources that they need, not just resources from outside, but just emotional resources. I really liked Ms. Savage's answer about explaining the statutes to the court. I'm very much a statutes-driven person. Since she already talked about that, I would also talk about at the end of the case. I think sometimes the reasoning behind a ruling should be explained to the litigants. Again, she talked about not having justice done to them, but sort of explain how I got to a resolution so that a party can understand exactly that I heard both sides and not just said, okay, I've made my decision in the first couple of seconds, but I really listened to each side and explained why I made my ruling. And I think she's signaling I'm done.
Yep. And then we're gonna go to Hank Brown. Sorry. No.
Hang on, Brad. Just kidding. So I think ensuring you were asking about it, bringing a trauma-informed practice. I think giving juveniles who are going through delinquency cases hope. As a former high school dropout, I understand what it can feel like to be in different situations, and having that understanding and being able to convey that to juveniles going through that process I found when I was a juvenile court attorney that can be helpful. As far as people coming through who are representing themselves in domestic relations matters and divorce and custody issues, I think really being present, taking a moment to see each person, hear from each person, so that at the end you can make a fair decision about how to apply the law to what's going on with their personal situation and explaining it to them so that they understand how that law applies to them as well and feel that that's a fair process to go through.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I'll have position 5 come up. There. See, there's John.
Yeah, we'll go here.
All right. John and Joe, the first question for you all, again, is what is your political affiliation or registration?
Democrat.
I'm a Democrat.
Okay, and then for the two of you, your 1 minute or less question is how can judges impact to help reform of mental health hospitals and programs?
So right now, we have an extreme overcrowding at the Oregon State Hospital to the point where I think it's been under consent decree overseen by Judge Mossman for almost a decade. I think we need to be strategic in who gets sent to the state mental health hospital and helping find other community resources that would be available for individuals in mental health crisis to rehabilitate them to become competent to stand trial, which is what the mental health, what the Oregon State Hospital backlog is currently doing.
Yeah, when someone is found unfit or not competent, we're sending folks to the state hospital. What we need to do, because of the overcrowding and folks are just languishing either in jail or before they get to the hospital, is more community-based restoration services. But really, quite frankly, the rub is a judge can order that. But if that's not available, then what do? Right? Judges have been trying to do more community-based services. But again, right, that's an investment that we are not finding. And I'll say one last thing on that. For rural communities, having traveled all around Oregon and helped less resourced communities, there's such a high percentage of, like, I think 70% of folks who are getting mental health services are all telehealth, because it's hard to attract and retain mental health providers in rural communities.
Right on time. Thank you, both of you, for the rapid fire. Next up, we have our position. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. That was rapid. Yeah, exactly. You can call me a lot of things, but just not a liar. All right. So, for our candidates up here for position 12, same first question goes to you all, that's the rest. What is your party or political affiliation?
I'm a registered Democrat and have worked on many Democratic campaigns.
True and blue Democrat since I voted for Clinton long ago, the first Clinton.
Awesome. And then this question is similar. I'm just gonna give you about a minute to respond. So this question thanks you, Judge Brown, for your service to the country and the Air Force. It also thanks you, Peter, for your service as a public defender. So given both of your backgrounds, the question is, how do you think judges should defend our democracy here at home, given the current political climate?
Thank you. So this question is not just something that's happening at the federal level, national scale. We are seeing it right here at home, which is that our systems are under attack, and particularly our courts. We see it when judges are being just taken to the press because they've made a decision that some other person in the executive branch doesn't like. And that's not a reason to question our democracy or to distrust our democracy. When we were created as a democracy, it was at the will of the people to keep our democracy. And so the point of having elected judges is bringing people like this into the room and getting people interested in what goes on in our current courts. But it does not mean that we have to bend to the will of the other powers that be. That's why we have our checks and balances. That's why we have the rule of law for those reviews. And so judges need to hold the line and we need you to hold it with us.
So just briefly, I think the most important way that a local judge can ensure our democracy is kept is by adhering to the rule of law without favor to any particular party. And the way that our democracy is kept is by ensuring that everybody has the same set of rules and that we're all following those. So I'm not entirely sure where the judge was going with this attack on democracy from the executive branch. It sounds like she has a dispute with our district attorney, which quite frankly is not the race on the ballot in May. This May, as part of our democracy, we get to elect a judge. That's either Judge Brown, the incumbent, or me, Peter Clem, a career public defender.
May I respond, given that I was personally named in that response?
I will say this, I will give both of you a chance to respond because Judge, you did mention him earlier. And so I'll give you both a chance to respond to each other. And just for clarity's sake, and so you may respond to his comment, and then Peter, I'll give you a chance to respond to her previous comment as well.
You'll have to remind me what my previous comment was.
Don't worry, I'm ready to do so.
Okay, excellent. All right, so just to make this abundantly clear, I'm here to do the job and the work of the court. There were several individuals up here that talked about being ready on day one. I'm at year 5.5. I take every assignment given to me. We don't have a choice in doing that. That is my job. It is also my job to ensure that every time I go into the courtroom, it's not out of fear of how my decision is going to be attacked. I have no beef with the district attorney. I absolutely have a respect for the district attorney's office. I was a prosecutor myself. I'm married to a career prosecutor. This is not the issue. The issue is the district attorney came after me using the press, and my opponent acknowledged during our interview with the Willamette Week, that is why he is running. His top two endorsers that he named are Judge Eric Bergstrom and now Norm
Judge,
Frank.
I'm gonna pause you there because it's past time for your rebuttal, and also you started making another comment about him, so.
No, I'm responding to the
Yeah.
comment that I am somehow
I know.
attacking the DA. The DA has attacked
Yeah,
me
and you
and I
expressed that
responded.
point, and you expressed that point. Very well. Alright, so Peter, I'm gonna give you a chance to respond. Earlier, the judge made a comment about how your idea sounds really great when it came to taking the court out to East County or having different options, but it may not be something that is feasible or attainable, quite in the way that you described it.
No, I want to correct that. I said we should ask. We should ask the
Right.
question, not that it's not
I'm
feasible.
gonna finish my comment.
Okay.
That it was not quite feasible in the way that you described it, because the ask was, we should be asking those communities what they would like to see from us. Would you like to respond to that comment?
I'm not entirely sure how to respond to that. I know that we asked taxpayers back in 2012 if we should build a courthouse out in Rockwood, and we spent $15 million on that, and I think we should utilize it. And I know that the community in East County wants to have more interaction with the courts. I'm the only judicial candidate ever endorsed by East County Rising. And I know that when we went out to Rosewood Initiative, the community came out to it. So I'm not sure how else to respond to that.
Great, thank you both for that. And then so I'm going to ask our candidates from race 2 and race 5 to come up to just do one last of your name and the position that you're running for. For the folks at home. So feel free to pick up the mic, introduce yourself and what position. We'll start with position 2. And then you don't need to sit down for this one, like let's keep rotating it around. So you're, yeah, scooch this way a little bit to what is your right, scooch a little to your right, to your right, to your right, to your right. To your right, to your right. We're gonna do this like Wheel of Fortune sort of Vanna White style where you're just gonna pass through and say your name one more time. So if you want to scooch a little bit more to your right, yep, keep going to your right. You're just gonna like say your name, your position, pass the mic, move over. Say your name, pass the mic, move over. All right. Yes, yep, we're gonna Congo and style this up. So, let's go with Laura first.
Laura Mauer Rowan, position 2.
Chris Bear, position 2.
Anna Jindal, position 2.
Juliet Britton, position 2.
Diane Sykes, position 2.
Joe Perini Abbott, position 5.
John Castellino, position 5.
All right, positions 12 and 14.
Peter Clem, position 12.
Judge Adrian Brown, position 12.
Elizabeth Savage, position 14.
Christine Alquist, position 14.
Bradford Gerke, position 14. Joe Hagedorn, position 14.
Michael Lee, position 14.
And then Heidi.
And Heidi, oh, sorry. And Heidi Brown, position 14.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here, being present. We do have this space open for a little bit longer for folks to have one-on-one question with candidates while they're still here. Again, my name is Salome Shumagu, or Salome Shumagu. I use she and her pronouns. I am the chair of the Multnomah County Democrats, and I want to thank you all for coming. Please make sure to stop by in the front area. We have information about what the local Dems are doing, information on each of these candidates if you'd like to know more, and also give you this opportunity to mix and mingle with them. And with that, have a great night.
Salome, is there an opportunity for people to ask me questions, or should I?
All up there and take a picture of everyone.
I mean, that's up to them. I'm not gonna stop you.
Thank you very much for doing all of that. Okay.
Make sure that you all actually have some time to talk one-on-one with folks.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm like, direct question.